Hello X and fellow Anons. You may or may not remember me, and it would not surprise me if you do not, as my last post was such a long time ago now. For those of you who don't know or were not around when the original thread was up, I published on this board a series of incredibly rare photos that another Anon who was working as a production editor at a small publisher was working on posting a book of these photos, but the old man providing the photos to him pulled the plug. He was understandably pissed that he could not complete his project, and so he leaked all of the photos and the text online, I believe on this board also. This is when I come in. Have you ever heard of an auction company named Softbase? It was an auction house that was founded in London, but is headquartered in New York, and they broker some of the most expensive art auctions in history. Not only that, but they also host and handle thousands of private sales every single year that not just anyone can access. The sales and the knowledge of the items are kept completely out of the public eye, and nobody knows that any of these items still exist, aside from those with connections and the obscenely wealthy. Their website has a preferred access section that you can only access if you are given an invite from someone, and I have one of those accounts. To make a long story short, the guy who was providing the photos was attempting to auction them picture by picture, and I believe they all sold in the end. I took pictures from this auction, and I shared them for people here on X. These original photographs that were being sold in this auction are very rare for a place like Softbase, and is not something that they usually handle. But sometimes they have themed auctions, and this was one such one taking place in October, and many strange, spooky items were being sold by all of these rich degenerates. So, why am I back? Well, to keep it short and sweet, this October passed. 8 months already, jeez. I seriously lost track of time, and I took pictures of all of the photos, once again, and made a note of the backstories that they had on the website, in order to really sell the photos. I have no idea if these are from the same old man all those years ago, but it seems like it would be way too big of a coincidence to not be him. It's not Halloween, but happy summer X. Again, don't say I don't give you anything. The final photo taken of an explorer before he was cannibalized by a remote tribe. Pictured in this photo is one Michael Rockefeller, who was the son of Nelson Rockefeller, who was a New York governor that would go on to be the Vice President of the United States under President Gerald Ford from 1974 to 1977. He is pictured here with the Asmat tribe of New Guinea, who were known for their practicing of cannibalism. It is believed that they beheaded their victims after performing a ritual and before eating the whole body of the person. Michael disappeared without a trace in November of 1961 after his catamaran ship capsized near one of the islands, and his body was never found. It is unknown whether he drowned or whether he managed to reach the beach and was beheaded and eaten by the cannibals that he had visited earlier. This part was not part of the auction, but there is somewhat of a follow-up to this that is very sketchy in its validity. Here is another photo from just 8 years later, in 1969, that appears to show a white Papuan man appearing with the native tribe and was captured as part of a documentary. The photo in question is believed to show Michael Rockefeller and does indeed bear a striking resemblance to the man. Perhaps he grew tired of his wealth and position in society and simply wanted to live a carefree life in nature. We will never truly know for sure. Thought you might appreciate the added context, but I will now press on with the other photos. The furs and corpse of the 19th century sailor John Torrington. This ghastly image is all that remained of the young sailor John Torrington, who died at the age of just 21 years old after he died alongside 100 other individuals during the Franklin expedition in the year of 1845. The expedition was a planned exploration of the Arctic, headed by one Captain John Franklin, and the goal was to explore the final unexplored sections of the Northwest Passage in the Canadian Arctic. 2 ships were deployed, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror. During the voyage, approximately 129 officers and crew became blocked by ice in a strait near King William Island. The ships were officially abandoned after they had been stuck for multiple years in this strait, caught in between the ice. All of the men were presumed dead from either starvation or from succumbing to the elements. Many searches for the missing men were conducted in the following years, and many artifacts were discovered belonging to the vessel, as well as a couple of bodies, which were quickly retrieved. The men caught on these vessels did not die quickly. Analysis of the corpses suggests that they died slowly and painfully from disease or vitamin deficiencies, lead poisoning, and one report even suggests that acts of cannibalism were committed due to cut marks on some of the bones that were discovered during studies. This picture of Torrington was not snapped until the year 1984, when an expedition team received legal permission to dig up his remains in order to conduct tests on the bones to determine the hypothesis of lead poisoning as a cause of death. This is considered one of the worst disasters in maritime history. The last known photo of the victims of the Dyatlov Pass incident. In January 1959, a group of young hikers trekked into the northern Urals in Soviet Russia and were never seen again. This is one of the last photos taken of the hikers before they disappeared, recovered from one of their cameras. Now known as the Dyatlov Pass incident, the mystery of the hikers' disappearance only deepened when the bodies were discovered some months later. Some of them were found without eyes, another was found without a tongue, and several were struck by an unknown force comparable to a speeding car. What actually happened to them remains uncertain to this day. The Soulway F Spaceman photo. The Soulway F Spaceman has become somewhat legendary since fireman, photographer, and local historian Jim Templeton captured a photo that seemed to show a mysterious figure in the background. Templeton asserted that on May 23rd, 1964, when the photo was taken, the only other people present on the marshes were two elderly women in a distant car. In a letter to the Daily Mail, nearly 4 decades later, Templeton revealed that he had taken 3 photos of his daughter in similar poses, only to find that the second image displayed what looked like an extraterrestrial being behind her. Despite claiming he had not seen the figure at the time, Kodak analysts verified the photograph's authenticity. However, UFO book author David Clark offers a different view of the photo. Clark suggests that the spaceman is likely Templeton's wife, Annie, who was there during the shoot and appeared in another photo from the same day. I think his wife accidentally walked into the shot, and he didn't notice because that particular camera model showed only 70% of the actual view through the viewfinder, Clark explained. Annie, wearing a pale blue dress and sporting dark, bobbed hair, might have appeared strange under the photo's conditions. When the image is darkened and the horizon is straightened with photo software, the figure increasingly resembles an ordinary person seen from behind, casting doubt on the supernatural interpretation of the Soulway F Spaceman photo. The BTK Strangler at his daughter's graduation, as well as a very rare photo of one of his victims. It looks like just an ordinary photo of a father happy to see his daughter graduate. However, the guy on the left is Dennis Rader, aka the BTK Killer, who killed 10 people over the span of about 25 years, all the while being a beloved member of his community. He was a security system technician, a Cub Scout leader, a church president, a city worker, a happily married father of 2, and a sadistic serial killer. The idea that pretty much any normal-looking person you see on the street could actually be a total psychopath is incredibly unsettling. For anyone who is not aware, the way they caught Dennis Rader was rather unusual. He was basically taunting the police, daring them to catch him, leaving little dolls with tied hands and feet to symbolize the victims. But apparently, that was not enough. In one of his letters to the police, he asked if they would be able to trace him if he sent them a floppy disk. The police, who at this point probably could not believe their luck, replied that it would be perfectly safe, so he actually proceeded to send it and believed them completely. They found some metadata on a deleted Microsoft Word document on the disk that linked to his church and said it was last modified by Dennis. It took them all of 5 minutes to check that there was a Dennis raider working at the church, and then he became their prime suspect. Unfortunately for the police officers who were working on the case at the time, this alone was not sufficient enough evidence to bring Raider in. They needed additional evidence if they wanted to put him behind bars and serve proper justice. They were going to need DNA evidence. The police used DNA from a pap smear that his daughter had done at the Kansas State University Medical Center while she was a student there, which showed a familial link to DNA found at the crime scenes. That was enough for them to arrest Raider. This was able to be done because clinics are required by law to keep tissue samples from the patient after a pap smear for a period of around 5 years in total. The obtaining of the DNA was completely legal because the police on the case managed to acquire a court order that allowed them to request for the clinic to hand over the DNA sample to them. This court order would not usually have been granted, but because the police already had prior evidence to support the case and had a prime suspect who they would be solely testing the sample against, the order was granted and allowed the arrest of Raider once and for all. As reported in The Atlantic, Raider was apparently very upset that the police had lied to him about it being safe. "I need to ask you, how come you lied to me?" "How come you lied to me?" Raider asked. "Because I was trying to catch you," Ken Landwehr, the homicide detective widely credited with catching him, answered coolly. The Tulip Staircase Ghost. The Queen's House, located in the heart of London, has been a subject of fascination for generations. In 1966, a retired Canadian reverend and his wife were among the many visitors to the famous Tulip Staircase, and they took a photograph to commemorate their visit. It wasn't until they returned home and developed the photo that they realized that something was amiss. A shrouded figure seemed to be ascending the stairs in pursuit of one or two others. Upon further inspection, the Hardys were certain that the staircase had been empty at the time the photograph was taken, and a subsequent investigation failed to uncover any rational explanation for the mysterious apparition. As the Reverend later wrote in a letter, the enigma of the Tulip Staircase remained as inscrutable as ever, defying all attempts to explain the seemingly inexplicable. It's just one of the many enigmas that haunt the Queen's House, a place where the line between fact and fiction can be difficult to discern. The Hampton Court Ghost, Skeletor. During winter 2003, the security staff at Hampton Court Palace responded to an unusual occurrence near the palace's clock court. The same fire door was found wide open on 3 consecutive days, without any apparent reason. The CCTV footage from the first day showed the doors being pushed open with great force. However, the second day's footage captured a ghostly-looking figure in period dress suddenly appearing on the screen and closing the doors. Although the doors opened again on the third day, there was no sign of the ghostly figure. Even a visitor wrote in the palace's visitor book that she thought she had seen a ghost in the area. This CCTV footage caught the attention of the world's media, with reports in newspapers, TV, and radio around the world, leading to the nickname Skeletor. The 1988 Gladbeck hostage crisis. This image was taken in 1988 and was taken during the Gladbeck hostage crisis in Germany. The man pictured on the left is a robber, and the girl pictured on the right is a hostage who was killed while the police was taking action to stop the crisis. On the first day, 2 men robbed a bank and held some individuals as hostages. The first demand that they made was that they would be provided with a getaway car so that they could safely flee the scene of the crime and not be detained by the police. The police complied with this request as quickly as possible, and the 2 criminals were given a white Audi and 300,000 German marks. The 2 men took hostages with them in the car that they were provided with as a failsafe, so that they could not be immediately apprehended. Later on, the girlfriend of one of the 2 criminals joined them and entered the car with them. News reporters were following them with their cars. The next day, the 2 criminals hijacked a bus with 32 passengers sitting inside. A couple of times they allowed a news reporter to come into the bus and interview them. Later, one of the robbers even came out of the bus to give an interview. In the interview, the hostages are visible in the back end of the bus. The man that was featured on the interview said that he doesn't care what will happen in the end because he will take his own life, and that he doesn't really care about his own life. Later, they let some hostages out of the bus and drove the bus away. They stopped the bus at a gas station where the girlfriend of the robber went to the toilet, where police arrested her. When the robber found out about it, he said that the officers had 5 minutes to free her or that a hostage would be killed. She was released by the police, but while she was running to the bus, an Italian teenager was executed by the two criminals. The Italian teenager was simply protecting his little sister. He could have survived if there was an ambulance near the gas station. In the night, they drove the bus to the Netherlands, where the Dutch police demanded for them to release the young hostages first, before accepting any offerings from the criminals. After they released a few hostages, the Dutch police gave the robbers a BMW car with remote control. The robbers took 2 hostages with them and drove them back to Germany. Later on, they were surrounded by a lot of media reporters who took many pictures of the scene of the crime. While they were driving on a highway, the German police finally took action and rammed the hostage car. One of the hostages was able to flee from the vehicle and out onto the highway, while the other hostage was not so lucky and was shot and killed. One of the 2 criminals later said in an interview that the bullets from the policeman were what killed the hostage. The German police denied this claim and said that it was instead a bullet from the criminals that struck and killed the hostage. A 31-year-old police officer suffered fatal injuries during a traffic accident while trying to pursue the 2 criminals. The police were heavily criticized by the media for giving directions to the hostage takers and for their indecisive actions during the ordeal. The shadow of a person from Hiroshima imprinted onto the ground by an atomic bomb. It is also known as human shadow of death, or simply black shadow, and is located at the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum. It is believed that the imprint is of a person who was immediately vaporized following the United States dropping the little boy nuclear bomb on Hiroshima, which killed 80,000 people approximately. The story alleges that a person was merely sitting on the steps of the bank and waiting patiently for it to open when they were caught in the aftermath of the bomb, and the sheer heat from the explosion etched the shadow of the person into the stone. The person died immediately from the flash of the bomb and was thought to be a 42-year-old woman named Mitsuno Ochi. Vladimir Putin spying on Ronald Reagan. The photograph captures a young man wearing a camera on the side of the picture, standing next to Ronald Reagan, who is about to shake hands with a small boy. In the background, there are Soviet officials dressed in gray suits, and the photo was taken during the US president's visit to Moscow's Red Square in 1988. The identity of the young man has caused a mystery, with some suggesting that he may be Vladimir Putin, the current Russian Prime Minister. Pete Souza, President Obama's official photographer, believes that the young man in the cream-colored slacks and short-sleeved shirt is indeed Putin. Some suggest that Putin, who was a KGB recruit at the time, may have been trying to question Reagan about his human rights record. However, Putin's press spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, denies that the young man in the photo is Putin. The Salem UFO sighting of 1952. Captured on August 3rd, 1952, in the skies above Salem, Massachusetts, this photograph has not been doctored and has never been explained. The image, taken by 21-year-old U.S. Coast Guard officer Shell Alpert, depicts 4 unidentified flying objects hovering in formation. It has remained one of the most prominent photographs of a UFO ever taken and has since been entered into the Library of Congress. Unidentified lights captured on Mars by the rover Curiosity. In June 2019, NASA's Curiosity rover captured a series of images on Mars, and one of them showed a bright blip that did not appear in any other image. This is one of the many mysteries of Mars. The rover also captured a similar glow on the horizon in 2014, which NASA's Doug Ellison believes was a cosmic ray hit. Galactic cosmic rays are particles accelerated to near the speed of light that come into our solar system from other stars or even galaxies. Scientists are concerned about how to protect astronauts on Mars from the effects of radiation from cosmic rays. Apollo astronauts also reported seeing faint spots or flashes of light in the cabin when it was dark, which NASA attributed to cosmic rays. The Bachelors Grove Ghost. Bachelors Grove, a cemetery located outside Chicago, has a reputation for being one of the most haunted places in the region. People have reported seeing ghosts and other unexplained phenomena for over a century. The area used to be like a park with a pond for fishing and swimming, but as it became more isolated, it fell into disrepair and became a target for vandalism. Some people believe that graves were opened and caskets removed, which led to the area becoming haunted. Others believe that black magic and occult activities are to blame. People have reported seeing a ghostly woman sitting on a tombstone and a ghostly horse pulling a plow with an old man on it. Some have also seen ghost cars on the nearby road that appear and disappear. If you can't see it, all you need to do is look just a little closer. The St. Augustine Lighthouse Ghost. The St. Augustine Lighthouse is a tall structure on the northern side of Anastasia Island and has been standing there since the mid-1500s. It has witnessed a lot of history, from the colonization of the Americas to the birth of a nation, and has always been a symbol of hope. Some people have claimed to have seen strange things at the lighthouse, such as a woman on the stairs, watching over the area. But who is she? Maria Mestre de los Dolores was the first woman to serve in the U.S. Coast Guard in 1859. She was also the first Hispanic American woman to command a federal shore installation, the St. Augustine Lighthouse. Her husband, Joseph Andre, was the caretaker of the lighthouse, but he tragically died. Maria followed in his footsteps and was heartbroken. Visitors have reported seeing her on the catwalk, looking down to where her husband had died. The St. Augustine Lighthouse is known for its haunted history, and is a place that leaves a mark on its visitors. The Ghost of the Brown Lady. According to legend, the apparition is that of Dorothy Walpole, who died in 1726, the sister of Robert Walpole, generally regarded as the first Prime Minister of Great Britain. She was the second wife of Charles Townshend, 2nd Viscount Townshend, who was notorious for his violent temper. The story also says that when Townshend discovered that his wife had committed adultery with Lord Wharton, he punished her by locking her in rooms in the family home, Raintham Hall. According to Mary Wortley Montague, Dorothy was in fact entrapped by the Countess of Wharton. She invited Dorothy over to stay for a few days, knowing that her husband would never allow her to leave, not even to see her children. She remained at Rainham Hall until her death in 1726 from smallpox. Of the numerous sightings of the Brown Lady Ghost, one was made by one Captain Frederick Marryat, who was close friends with Charles Dickens. Marryat was said to have spent a night in the haunted room that housed the Brown Lady in an attempt to prove his theory that the haunting was simply a hoax and was being orchestrated by local smugglers and criminals in order to keep the anxiety levels of the guests high so that they would tell others to stay away from the area, thus making their criminal activities much easier to carry out. Marryat's daughter, Florence, gave an account of her father's experience that he relayed to her. This is what she said. He took possession of the room in which the portrait of the apparition hung, and in which she had been seen often, and slept each night with a loaded revolver underneath his pillow. For 2 days, however, he saw nothing, and the third was to be the limit of his stay. On the third night, however, 2 young men, nephews of the baronet, knocked at his door as he was undressing to go to bed, and asked him to step over to their room, which was at the other end of the corridor, and give them his opinion on a new gun just arrived from London. My father was in his shirt and trousers, but as the hour was late and everybody had retired to rest except themselves, he prepared to accompany them as he was. As they were leaving the room, he caught up his revolver. "In case you meet the brown lady," he said, laughing. When the inspection of the gun was over, the young men in the same spirit declared they would accompany my father back again. "In case you meet the brown lady," they repeated, laughing also. The three gentlemen therefore returned in company. The corridor was long and dark, for the lights had been extinguished, but as they reached the middle of it, they saw the glimmer of a lamp coming towards them from the other end. One of the ladies, going to visit the nurseries, whispered the young Towsons to my father. Now the bedroom doors in that corridor faced each other, and each room had a double door with a space in between, as is the case in many old-fashioned houses. My father, as I have said, was in shirt and trousers only, and his native modesty made him feel uncomfortable, so he slipped within one of the outer doors, his friends following his example in order to conceal himself until the lady should have passed by. I have heard him describe how he watched her approaching nearer and nearer through the gap in the door until, as she was close enough for him to distinguish the colors and style of her costume, he recognized the figure as the facsimile of the portrait of the brown lady. He had his finger on the trigger of his revolver and was about to demand it to stop and give the reason for its presence there when the figure halted of its own accord before the door behind which he stood, and holding the lighted lamp she carried to her features, grinned in a malicious and diabolical manner at him. This act so infuriated my father, who was anything but lamb-like in disposition, that he sprang into the corridor with a bound and discharged the revolver right in her face. The figure instantly disappeared. The figure at which, for several minutes, three men had been looking together, and the bullet passed through the outer door of the room on the opposite side of the corridor, and lodged in the panel of the inner one. My father never attempted again to interfere with the brown lady of Raynham. The SS Watertown Ghosts. In December 1924, two crew members of the SS Watertown, James Courtney and Michael Meehan, were cleaning a cargo tank of the oil tanker when they were overcome by gas fumes and died. The rest of the crew buried them in the sea, but the next day, they were surprised to see ghostly faces of the men in the water. As time went on, many other crew members also reported seeing the faces. The faces were so clear that the captain of the ship ordered for a picture to be taken of them. The negative was checked for signs of forgery and was confirmed to be genuine. The Army of Ghosts. Not much is actually known about this photograph that was taken at night of a man brandishing his firearm while smoking, with presumably his two young boys by his side. Taking a closer look into the background of this photo reveals what appears to be several unexplainable lights floating in midair, just above the heads of the people pictured. The lights seem to be attached to what look like the torsos of several menacing figures who can just barely be made out. The photo appears to have been circulating around for many years, but the origin of the photo, the identity of those in the picture, and the location where this photo occurred have not yet been determined. Did these people have a brush with the unknown? The mysterious pyramid photographed by the crew of the Apollo 17 mission. NASA's Apollo 17 mission to the moon in 1972 is known for its interesting photographs, including one that has caused controversy among UFO enthusiasts. The image, labeled AS-17-135-20680HR, appears to show a pyramid-like structure on the lunar surface. However, closer examination reveals that it was a low-quality image of the LVR under unique lighting conditions. Despite this explanation, some UFO hunters still wonder if there is more to the story, and if there are structures on the moon that have not yet been disclosed. The Apollo 17 mission itself was the last manned lunar exploration mission, and it is known for its unique characteristics, such as being the only Saturn V night launch. The mission successfully landed in Taurus Littrow and returned samples to Earth. However, the mysterious image has captured the imagination of those who believe in extraterrestrial life and has spurred debates about what really exists on the moon. The Spector of Newbie Church. The Spector of Newbie Church, also known as the Newbie Monk, is a figure that appears in a photograph taken at the Church of Christ the Consoler, located on the grounds of Newbie Hall in North Yorkshire, United Kingdom. The photo was taken in 1963 by the Reverend Kenneth F. Lord. Many people have speculated about the identity of the figure, which appears to resemble a human. Some believe it is a 16th century monk wearing a white shroud over his face to conceal disfigurement, while others think it could be a person wearing a costume. Some have claimed that the figure is 9 feet tall, but this is not confirmed.